Tropical storm Debby is nearing the South Carolina coast, not too far from Charleston. Rain has been falling in the Carolinas today. Winds have picked up a little bit too. And we have a pretty good idea of how this is all going to play out over the next couple of days as Debbie heads north and then northeast up the Appalachians into upstate New York and eventually into Canada. And the good news is, just to put the rain to one side, talk about the fact that once it goes by, we've got some nice dry air and a low humidity weather pattern setting up for at least a few days, beginning over the weekend. So we'll talk about all of this tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which is, of course, brought to you by Tempest by Weatherflow. The revolutionary Tempest weather system is yours for the asking. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet if you get one. The link is on the description of this podcast. There's a coupon code, Joe Rayo, and it is
Summer 2024.
And if you use said coupon code, you will receive
10, not 9 or 8, not 11 or 12, but 10% off.
Before we get started with the weather, I just want to say good evening to everybody on the chat board. And two of our chat board regulars are not on the chat board tonight. I just want to extend our best to Johnny Quest. His dad is ill and in the hospital, and Johnny's been taking care of him. We send him all our best and all the positive energy so that Johnny's dad will get well very soon. And just wanted to give you a big hello and a big hug, Johnny. And also Scott Briller, who's been taking care of his mom who had a fall, and she is in rehab right now. So we hope also for a speedy recovery, and all the best to you, Scott, as you take care of your mom. We want everybody to be well here on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. Correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Joe,
And
my high temperature here in Putnam Valley today was 69 degrees.
this is probably this is the coolest day probably since June.
Well, the 69 came at 12:01 a.m. this morning. That gives you a pretty good idea of how cool it really was.
Oh, so you've been basically in the mid 60s all day.
Basically, that has been the case. Hard
Yeah,
to believe.
well, we're getting to this time of now that we're into August. Um, this sort of thing should start to happen. Not so much the thunderstorm part of it that we had ahead of it that soaked everybody, a lot of people with 2 to 5 inches of rain. But these cooler shots of air should start to make occasional appearances, and by the time we get to the latter part of September, hopefully they will be more than just occasional appearances.
Well, last night we had here where I am, Putnam Valley, we had maybe 2 or 3 hours of rain, and at one point, raining cats and dogs. But we really didn't pick up much more than an inch in any one sitting. Meanwhile, there were places just to the south of where I am, the Bronx, for example, in Fordham, in the Bronx, they picked up something like 4 inches of rain,
Yeah.
and other places had similarly high amounts, but still other spots like where I am had maybe just an inch or so. So it varied widely depending upon where you happen to be. But all last night and all through this morning, we saw all kinds of reports of towns and communities that were flooded out, um, cars that were driving with water up to their quarter panels, that kind of stuff. But yeah, pretty amazing, and more rain to come. It would seem.
Yes. In fact, um, hold on a second, Joe, because I do actually have a video, but I just gotta see if I can bring this up on the screen here. So just give me a moment. Um, I was able to play it on my phone, just with regards to the flooding that you were talking about. Let's see if I can make this work. It's being oh, there it goes. Let's see. Uh, Okay. All right, let's see if I can bring this up on the screen. Hold on, folks. Actually, I can. So this is Izzy D. This is in Brick Township in New Jersey. And I mean, this is what happened there. When I first saw it, I thought, what did high tide come in? But this was from the rainfall last night, so you can see that. Yeah, some places got hit really, really hard. There was quite a bit of flash flooding that occurred in some places and not so much in others. And of course, you got the nice payoff with the temperatures today in the 60s. Although, if you go down, further south, south of the frontal boundary line, it was in the 80s. So the warm tropical air is nearby. But I've just after looking at everything today, Joe, I mean, it's pretty certain that Debbie's going to take a track into South Carolina, into central North Carolina, and then move northward up through western Virginia, cutting across central Maryland and through central Pennsylvania and upstate New York. And I think that probably means that the rainfall amounts along, southeast New England back to southern New England, the Hudson Valley, much of New Jersey, southward to Delaware, into the Delmarva Peninsula, the rainfall might not be, I don't want to say all that much. I mean, there still could wind up with maybe an inch to an inch and a half or 2 inches of rain in some places in that zone. But I don't see this being any kind of extreme rain event for that particular area. If you're in eastern Pennsylvania and you go west, up in maybe north central New York and northeastern New York, down through the western half of Virginia, I think those areas are going to wind up being the ones that get hit with 4, 5, and 6 inch rainfalls.
Yeah, I think, well, we've said the general rule of thumb with a tropical system is any place to the left or to the west of the storm track is bound to get the heaviest amount of rain. Maybe, and I put on my Facebook page, 2 to maybe 5 inches for parts of central Pennsylvania, central and northern New York State. But we're not there. Here in the tri state area, the storm or the remnants of the storm, it's going to be a tropical depression by Friday evening as it passes closest to us, will be no more than 150 miles north and west of our area. And it's not out of the question that we could pick up upwards to 2 inches of rain, although I think, Joe, that quite frankly, because of the fast speed, and yes, it is going to pick up speed now as it moves northward, and the track, we may not see much more than an inch of additional rainfall. So, regardless, it does not look like we're in for another. The worst of this was from the cold front that took the better part of yesterday into last night to move on through and doused our area with a wide variety of rain totals, again anywhere from like an inch to 4 or 5 inches. That was the worst of it. Now we just have to deal with another round of rain coming from the remnants of Debbie, and that will be probably for the most part Friday into Friday night. In fact, Joe, we were touching upon this yesterday. I think that quite frankly, you wake up on Saturday morning,
It's long gone.
it's
Long
all
gone.
it's gone, and
Yeah.
we may get into a clearing trend and see developing sunshine. The humidity will start dropping off. A friend of mine asked me about, what about the Yankee game? Will they get the Yankee game in? I said, of course they'll get the Yankee game in. It may even be partly sunny when the game starts on Saturday. So it looks like not just Sunday, but it looks like Saturday too will be a pretty decent day. And it looks like, as you just alluded to, nice weather not only for Saturday and Sunday, but even for Monday, Tuesday, and maybe even into the middle of next week as well.
Yeah. It's a nice deep trough that's coming down from the north, and it's going to keep the dew points low in the 50s, probably into the middle part of next week. Might even push a little bit beyond that with a little luck. I have WPC's rainfall forecast map, which they updated this afternoon. I think this is a fair assessment here, but the darker green areas is 2 to 4 inches. The light green is 1 to 2, and I think it makes sense. Two things to note: the yellow, which is the 4 to 6 zone, I believe.
Yeah.
I'm right. There's a 4 to 6 zone. Um, what's interesting to me is the fact that it's 2 to 4 and 4 to 6 in central and western Virginia. This area has been is under drought conditions. So this is what they've been waiting for. Uh, I don't know if they, maybe not much beyond half a foot of rain, but hopefully not. But this will definitely go a long way to help alleviate the dry conditions there. We're still getting, of course, dealing with additional rainfalls in South Carolina and it's out of southeast Georgia for the most part, but we're still dealing with bands of rain that are coming in. So they're still looking at another additional 6 inches, 6 to 10 inches of rain in some places on top of I don't even know how many inches that they've gotten. I've been trying to find, I love, kudos to the Weather Service in Upton because they always put a link at the top of their homepage when we get, these big rain events or big wind events where you could just click on it and go to the page where it's got all the rainfall amounts and the wind amounts. Most of the other stations don't do that. And you have to go searching for their public information statement if they've even issued one. And I had a lot of trouble finding them today. So um, hopefully tomorrow I could, get something that has a sense of just how much the big totals were in the southeastern U.S.
Well, basically, we are through this round of precipitation, Joe, and as we just mentioned, the next round will be coming our way with the actual corpse, if you will, of Debbie.
You like that word, corpse?
Well, yes, it's by the time it gets up to us, it really is nothing going to be nothing
Well,
more than
it'll merge with that frontal trough. It'll just be a low on the cold front.
yeah, yeah.
And,
So
and I don't think also. I mean, we're gonna probably have. Oh, the other thing I want to mention too is the fact that Friday on the east side, you're going to get less rain, but there might be some severe weather risk. And given the fact that it is just a tropical system, um, and it always, even when they transition, they always maintain a certain tropicalness to them. This might be the kind of setup you've got, southerly winds along the East Coast, and that rotation, if it's an identifiable feature as it moves northward, it's not impossible that we could see a few tornado, we'll call them small tornadoes that might pop up here and there. They have SPC has a marginal risk, and we'll take a look at that in a little while.
right, okay.
Okay. So we've got what's that? I'm sorry.
That was a cough.
Oh, okay. A salute.
Ah,
We have the flood watches have been going up. They're not done. The offices, one office does them, one others, some of them will do it ahead of time, some of them want to wait till the day before. But we've got a lot of flash flood watches up for much of North Carolina. Obviously, we still have tropical storm warnings ongoing in South Carolina into parts of coastal North Carolina. We I think we had a severe thunderstorm watch up earlier, but I don't think it's up anymore. But I'll check that in a second. But we got flash flood watches up now for much of the state of Virginia into West Virginia, the western half of Maryland, and central Pennsylvania. And they'll probably add to this to some degree. Certainly going to add counties in New York State before it is all said and done. And of course, the weather on the west to the west of all of this has actually been spectacular. No thunderstorm activity at all, which is pretty unusual for the Gulf states, and just sunshine and heat. That's why we've got heat advisories up from the Florida Panhandle westward, back up into Texas and on up into Oklahoma. And here's the wide view of the radar. Joe Rayo, of course, is our radar go-to guy. So he's going to be taking us on a tour here, and I'm going to give him the screen so that he can go ahead and show you what is happening both locally, because there's some stuff on the local radars, and we'll go take a look at Debbie in South Carolina.
all right then. So why don't we do that? Let's.
Okay, before you do,
Yes.
you're It's not on my screen.
It's not on your screen yet?
No. So open up your, just come back close out that for a second. Just come back to me.
Share and
Okay. Oh, all right, hang on a second. Yeah, you're in a little window on the side of me, and I have to get out of that. Okay. Now, go ahead and do what you got to do.
okay.
And there you go. Okay, now we're good. Sorry about that, folks.
Woody. So let's go down to come on. Come on. Now why is it not doing anything? I'm clicking and it's not.
Yeah, there it goes.
Here we go. This is for Charleston, South Carolina, and you can see that the storm system is obviously offshore. This is one of the spiral bands of rain rotating around Debby, and that is covering a good part of the central and eastern part of South Carolina and still affecting portions of the coastal plain of Georgia as well. We see areas of yellow and orange indicating moderate to maybe at times heavy rainfall falling over this region. The Charleston region is pretty much right in the middle here, right about here, CLX. And if we move elsewhere, let's go further north up along the coast to, let's go to Wilmington, North Carolina. And you can see here, again, one of the bands of rain from this vantage point. The band of rain is moving on a north-northwest trajectory. And you can
By the way, it's a very broad center. We talked about this yesterday. There's almost like it looks like a giant donut on the satellite. There's no real core in this tropical storm. Uh, so the lack of a core has prevented this from strengthening much. It's gotten a little stronger. The pressures have fallen today, and the winds have picked up. They are carrying 60 miles an hour on the advisory, but um, without the core, you're not even with the warm water. You're not going to get the strengthening, and of course, it doesn't have time now. So because the center will be coming ashore overnight into Thursday morning.
And I would presume, Joe, that the center of the storm, well, not necessarily the core, but at least the center of the storm, be somewhere around here right now. And you could see how, again, the rain bands are spiraling or rotating around that one area. And again, heavy, moderate to heavy rainfall falling over portions of eastern South Carolina, southern North Carolina. If we continue on a northward trajectory
Oh, and by
toward
the way, it's moving north at 3 miles an hour.
Well, it'll pick up in speed if the forecast from the Hurricane Center is correct. Over the next 24 to 48 hours, it's going to start increasing in forward speed. Here we see the viewpoint from eastern North Carolina and also for extreme southeastern Virginia, Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Virginia, the extreme southern tip of the Delmarva Peninsula. And again, much of what you're seeing here is light to moderate rain. The area is in orange and deep orange, showing areas where the rain may be coming down at a moderate to even heavy clip. And all of this activity, again, associated with Debby. And let's see, where else could we go?
You could go up further north because there's some stuff. There's some stuff on the local radars.
Okay, well, let's go to New York. And you can see that now this, what you're seeing here is not Debby. What you're seeing here south of Long Island and also across portions of northern New Jersey is probably affiliated or aligned with the weather front that caused all of the mayhem yesterday and last night. Of course, now the odds of seeing thundery weather or convective weather is not very good because the air is just too chilly and too stable. We've been in an east northeasterly wind for much of the day, which combined with the thick cloud cover held those temperatures from getting to above 70. But you could see that there are some rather moderate to heavy showers out over the ocean south of Long Island and also over portions of northern New Jersey as well. And also here off of the eastern tip of Long Island, again moving on a west to east trajectory.
Well, you can check out Fort Dix.
Check out what?
Fort Dix.
Oh, Fort Dix.
Hmm.
Well, let's see. Let's see what Fort Dix. Oh, I went a little bit too far south. I'm
No,
sorry.
that's perfect. That's perfect. Go back to that.
Okay, here we are. This is Dover Air Force Base, Allendale, Delaware, and you can see that there's a. Now, this down here, I believe, is related to Debbie, but up here, these lines of showers, again, may be affiliated more with the actual weather front that came on through late yesterday and last night. And you can see that there mostly is a light to moderate, or mostly light with some embedded areas here. This one spot I'm pointing to here and here showing areas of deep orange or red. So there may be some localized downpours occurring with this area here. And again, this is all the stuff that was on top of us yesterday that has now shifted off to the south.
And we'll, of course, now have to deal with stuff coming up from the south to the north. Although I didn't think there was going to. The big thing, the thing about tomorrow is you're still going to be in this easterly flow, so it's going to be cloudy. There's probably going to be some light rain or drizzle around. Maybe there might be some scattered downpours that pop up here and there, but especially if you go south. But overall, I think we're probably not going to see a whole lot in the way of precipitation for tomorrow.
Not likely. Spotty, light, drizzly, whatever you want to call it, but that's basically what the story is going to be for our area for the next 24 to 36 hours until we get Debbie up here to perhaps bring us a steadier period of precipitation later on Friday and into Friday night.
All right. So back to the wide view radar, and just want to point out that we do have some heavy weather going on in uh, Minnesota, in eastern Minnesota, and back up into northern Wisconsin, and also in southeast Minnesota to central Wisconsin. A few showers going on there. We've got some showers and thunderstorms in Colorado with a few severe thunderstorm warnings and even a tornado warning that's popped up east of Denver, and some scattered thunderstorms in southeast Arizona with a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings and flash flood warnings up there, and some scattered showers back over into Montana. The Storm Prediction Center, drum roll. Yeah, correct. We've got a tornado watch that's up in coastal North Carolina. And I think it also noses, it's like right on the North Carolina, South Carolina state line. And there's a marginal to slight risk of severe weather being indicated there. Also in the Central Plains, uh, back to northeastern Colorado, we've got this area of slight risk and a severe thunderstorm watch, which is playing out according to plan with the warnings and that tornado warning that popped up on the wide view radar. And they just issued a mesoscale discussion here. Tornado threat continues within Weather Watch 610, and they've got the area circled from on the South Carolina side, Georgetown, King Street to Kingstree, east of Florence, including Myrtle Beach. And on the North Carolina side, Wilmington, Southport, Burgaw, back over to about Lumberton, in a that they've circled as and highlighting for the possibility of some tornadoes in that mess. WP. Oh, let me just show you the rest of SPC's forecast here, because tomorrow the risk area moves a little further north. We've got a marginal to slight risk in North Carolina and southeastern Virginia. That comes with a 2 to 5% tornado risk. And on the day three outlook, the initial forecast that was put out last night, this was not updated today, a marginal risk from western Long Island and the lowest of the lower Hudson Valley, all of New Jersey, eastern Pennsylvania, Maryland, eastern Maryland, Delaware, and a small portion of eastern Virginia near Chesapeake Bay. It wouldn't shock me if they wind up expanding this just a little bit. Maybe they'll throw in a slight risk in there, but um, I'm not I'm not overly enthused from the standpoint of severe weather. This is what it is with respect to the tropical system. If the track were further east, if the track were, instead of going up through central Pennsylvania and central New York, it was coming up the immediate coastline, obviously we'd be talking a whole bunch of different things here with regards to the ramifications for areas closer to the coast. But again, being that it's tracking as far west as it is, I think this is the one thing we'll have to pay attention to is whether we wind up with some severe weather. The 7-day rainfalls, all of this is front end loaded. This is all from Debbie. Uh, in the east, and we showed you WPC's map from earlier. So it's basically 2 to 4 inches of rain as you go north. And if you go south from Virginia in the yellow areas, it's about a 4 to 6 inch rainfall with some locally higher amounts. The central plains to the middle Mississippi Valley, looking at 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a half plus over the next 7 days. Otherwise, precipitation in the Gulf states, just a few hundredths. Precipitation in Florida, half, 3/4 of an inch. Nothing really to go crazy over. And by the way, just didn't bring up the satellite loop. Debbie on the coast, and of course, you can all the anytime you get a tropical, any kind of circulation that's in this position, you're going to pull down there's drier air that's being evacuated out of the system in and of itself, and all of that air is sinking across the Gulf states, which is why they're bright and sunny, including me. I was bright and sunny today, and temperatures, especially areas to the west, in the to Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and Texas, got hot today. But no thunderstorm. Yes, it's very unusual because there's always pop-up storms in the summertime, almost every day, across the Gulf states. And this is the second or third day in a row where we've seen nothing in this zone.
Absolutely zip.
Yes,
Zip.
the big zero, the goose egg,
Yes.
nada, nil. Okay, so let's look at the upper air because I think that's something that we should touch upon. And let's do the GFS. I mean, I could use the European, but it's the same. The upper airs are not that different. But what we have, and here's Debbie from a couple of days ago. Well, coming in Monday in Florida, over the
And remember,
Florida Big Bend.
and remember, Joe, it was about a week ago when we were looking at the long range charts, and a lot of the long range maps were showing Debbie sliding off of the North Carolina coast out into the ocean somewhere. And I
Right.
remember I was concerned about my daughter, who will arrive tomorrow morning in Bermuda on a cruise, and she's supposed to come back on Saturday morning. And I was telling her, I said, "Oh my goodness!" He said, "You may have a hurricane between Bermuda and New York to worry about." Well, guess what, folks? It only goes to show you when you try to forecast, especially a tropical system, a week or more in advance. That's what happens. Instead
Eh,
of being out to sea, it now looks like it's going to be an inland system that's going to be again well away from the coastline eventually and passing across central New York and Pennsylvania instead.
Well, the westerlies in New England and down into the northern mid-Atlantic states never got far enough south to pick it up. It was too, it was, they were too far north. So the westerlies never did come down. The model was overdoing this deep trough in eastern Canada. It's impressive, but apparently it wasn't impressive enough to bring the westerlies down to, say, North or South Carolina to carry it out to the east. So it had to wait for this next upper trough, which is much more vigorous, this upper low, moving across Minnesota and over Lake Superior come Friday. And of course, uh, Debbie now opens the upper feature opens up and just lifts up and around it. And then this trough comes into the eastern part of the United States, and part of it goes out and part of it hangs back, which is why we think that after you get this first shot of dry air, there may be a second surge of dry air that comes in after Tuesday night. There's a short wave that's going to go by, and then we still have a yet another trough swinging around that. So interestingly enough, that should keep the humidity levels dry for much of next week. And by the way, you might notice on the lower right, the GFS has a fairly wrapped up system, so we're going to need to look at this. because it's not that far out into the long range. Well, let's see what it does with it on the upper air. It takes it through the Bahamas, and then it turns it northeast. Very tiny little feature because it's got this trough, another trough that digs down into the Great Lakes. Joe, that's far enough in the long range where that may or may not be there, or if it is there, it might be there in a different form. So, but this is we were saying that the tropics were going to pick up, and of course Debbie appeared, and there's plenty of time in the month for something else to show. So let's go to the surface here and take a look at what's going on. And all the models are pretty much the same, be it the Icon, the European. The Icon is, I think, been pretty spot on with this. The only thing, but the thing with the GFS is been it was squirrely trying to take the low westward across the Gulf states, which just didn't look right. And it's just a little bit slower than the others, but it just seems now to be catching up to the idea that this is going to be faster. So we're going to get it out of the way. The rains come up. You can see where all the heavy rains go with the yellows and reds, central and western PA, central and northern New York. Actually, really, um, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? God, I'm having a night filled with senior moments here. Amplifies. It really amplifies the rain Friday in northeast Pennsylvania and on up into upstate New York. And then eventually it just goes out. And then, of course, as I said, we got this drier air that's coming and going into next week. There's another short wave with maybe some showers Tuesday night. And there's the tropical system here, which it's taking it off the southeast coast and turning it northeast on this run. But um, long, long way to go with that. And the dew points. Let's look at the dew points, Joe. So Debbie goes up and out. We're going to see dew points on Friday, probably back up into the 70s. And then here comes the dry air behind it, arriving sometime later Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon. Notice that it goes all the way down into Alabama and Mississippi and into Georgia, getting into those nice dew points. And we have it here in the Northeast and Mid Atlantic states and Great
I,
Lakes.
I can hardly wait.
Right. I know. For Sunday, I'm looking, Joe, Sunday afternoon, there are mid 40s dew points across Pennsylvania. Sunday, Monday, still in the 50s on Tuesday. And then they inch up slightly, and then then they come back down, inch up slightly on Wednesday. They come back down in the 50s on Thursday, and you still have dew points in the 50s to around 60 next Friday. And of course, while all that's going on, there probably won't be that much to deal with as far as rain issues. I would think that most of the time it'll probably be dry.
Most of the time, in fact, hopefully all of the time, after all of the wetness we've seen so far this summer, and especially over the last several days, it'd be nice to put together or string together more than just a day or two of dry conditions. And I'm looking at my lawn, Joe, and I'm saying to myself, I'm really hoping that we'll get those dry dew points, lower dew points, and at least some sunshine on Saturday. It'll allow me finally to do the lawn, which I have not had a chance to do in about 10 days. But any case, it looks like we're in for a lovely, protracted, prolonged spell of dry, fine weather. Nicest weekend or the nicest stretch of weather so far this summer, all headed our way, beginning probably on Saturday.
By the way, both the GFS and the Icon model have something coming out of the tropical Atlantic about a week from now, and heading up, north of the islands. So that's two models that show it. Let's see if the European did. Uh, European's got something in the Caribbean here. European takes it more to the west, and it's got something that crosses Hispaniola, comes out the other side, and it deepens it as it passes just the eastern Bahamas. Looks like it's going to it would be somewhere halfway between Bermuda and the East Coast on the European. So all the models seem to have another system, and possibly maybe even two down the road in the next couple of weeks. And I guess that makes sense, considering where we are on the calendar and the fact that we did get Debbie to form. So, things are, the tropics are getting active. And if we're going to hit those high numbers, Joe, it's got to get, it's got to get busy because if you don't get more than one or two storms in August, that means there are probably going to be five or six of them very, very quickly when we get into the month of September.
It will start revving up after the middle part of August, as it always seems to do. How many storms we'll get from mid August until, let's say, early October, still up in the air. It would help if we had a La Nina. They're still waiting for a La Nina to officially develop. And in some cases, they're saying now, Joe, that we may not have a La Nina until September or October. That may help to hold the traffic down in the tropics, so to speak.
Yes, correct. 69 likes so far. Thank you for those of you who hit the like button. We love it when you hit the like button because we like to be liked. And if you like the show, hit the like button because we like to get to 100 likes, which is always nice. Um, let's see. I'm just kind of seeing no Ruben Fairchild. This is not going to be Diane or Agnes in Pennsylvania or New York. It's a totally different setup, and it's moving. It's moving too fast. Yeah,
Diane,
there'll be some big rains and flash flooding in some places, but it's not going to be it's not going to be any kind of record-breaking flash flooding there.
Diane and Agnes actually was Carol and Diane,
It actually was Connie and Diane.
Connie and Diane,
Right. They were
1950.
Yeah,
And
I think about that. I think about that because um I just wonder if what would happen if because we actually haven't seen something like that in those that was such a unique situation to have back-to-back hurricanes going into North Carolina 4 days apart. I just wonder what the media circus would do with that one if it happened today. Can you imagine?
oh well, we'd have certain experts on the air saying, "Here it is. It's another case of global warming."
Right,
And
there'd be a climate change chorus.
I mean, if you looked at the 1950s here in the Northeast, we had more tropical systems affect the Northeast in that decade alone than any other decade since. It was getting really ridiculous
Oh
at one
yeah.
point.
Well, there
And we,
was in 54, there was Connie. I'm sorry, 54 was Carol, Ione, and Edna, I think. Those were the three that came up the East
yeah,
Coast.
yeah, and then we finished out in a flourish in 1960 with Donna.
Donna.
And then we went through a long stretch where we didn't have much of anything until 1976 when Bell came along. Although we did have a tropical system in 1971, Doria, that came through with some significant rain. When you're talking about 1955 and 1972, Agnes and Connie and Diane, those were catastrophic flooding situations. And while it's bad out there with all the rain and all the floods that we have seen to this point in time, even with what we're expecting on Friday with the remnants of Debbie, that will not add up to a catastrophic or cataclysmic flooding situation. So, no.
I'm going to go into I'm at the Hurricane Center's website, trying to find where is, I didn't know we were going to go down this road, but there's a spot in here where is it the track maps? Um, let's see. The tropical cyclone reports only go back prior to 1995. They go only, between 1958 and 1994, they have them just all bunched up together. No, there's that one, they got past track maps of major U.S. landfalls. Okay, no, I don't want that. 1951 to 1960. Okay, so this is 1951 to 1960. These were all the landfalls that occurred in the eastern part of the United States. Carroll in 54 crossed over Long Island into New England. Edna in 54 passed, um, it was, I think maybe it was a couple of weeks later, in over Cape Cod. And then you had Ione. No, there was one more that year. I'm not seeing it. Um, Harold, Edna. Here's Donna and here's Connie, but they don't have Diane. Why is half this stuff missing here? And then of course you have Hazel, Hurricane Hazel,
Right.
which was a
That did a number on Toronto, believe it or not.
yes. Well, that was one that went up through central Pennsylvania and up into north of Lake and then north of Lake Erie. And that I think Hazel still was the record uh, the record wind gust in New York City, 109 miles an hour. That was from Hurricane Hazel. That was measured at the Battery.
Hazel, actually, I think it was Hazel, actually caused the Empire State Building to sway slightly, believe it or not.
Hmm.
And I, and they think they had recorded winds at the Battery gusting to over 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, Hazel was a Category 4 when it made landfall. All these storms here that made it up into the Northeast were Category 3s. Maybe that's why they don't have Diane, because maybe Diane was not a cat. They only have the threes, fours, and fives on here. So these are the majors. The minors are left out. Um, so we've got then there was Gracie, Helene, which just the eye of Helene got to within 10 miles of Hatteras before it made a sharp right turn and went out to the northeast. And then there was Audrey in 57 in southwest Louisiana, where there was so much rain that it washed the bodies were buried, recently buried bodies were washed up and were floating around, which I'm sure must have played very well. But it goes to what you said, Joe. The 50s were, that was a mega year, a mega decade for hurricane activity along the eastern seaboard.
Yeah, I think Dr. Neil Frank once told me he felt that hurricane activity comes in cycles, that there are periods where there's lots of hurricanes and there's a lull, and then all of a sudden everything starts up again, and
Yeah.
you get a kind of a bevy of another round of hurricanes, and so that may play into what we have seen in the past and what we may see in the future.
Anthony Janet was in 55 down in the Caribbean, and that was a Cat 5. So, in fact, that was the one storm where they lost a Hurricane Hunter plane while they were in there investigating it. That's been the only time that they had fatalities when going out on these Hurricane Hunter aircrafts when they go out to investigate, which I would never be part of, by the way.
Yeah.
I never had any desire to be part of that.
Well, I wouldn't want to be on any of those planes either. It's great that we have aircraft and people who physically want to fly into these storms, but you're not going to find me in any of those.
Well, I don't know if you ever, I don't forgot what it was. It was maybe about 5 or 6 years ago. They were at MacArthur Airport, the Hurricane Center. They do in the spring. They go out. And they have this thing where they go to the local airports, and you can go out and actually see the planes. And I can tell you the ones that they had. There's not much to them inside. I mean, there's no seating. You don't get seats ahead of time. There's no cabin service. It's pretty much you're sitting on the floor. Okay.
Wow.
So yeah, no, I'm not doing that. Well, I'm not going to get an opportunity to do that, but if they asked me, I would not do it.
I agree. I wouldn't do it either.
All right. So we'll call it a night, and of course, we will be back tomorrow night at 7:35 p.m. Eastern Time. The Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, as it's brought to you by Every Night Tempest by Weatherflow. Get the revolutionary Tempest weather system. Join the fastest growing observing weather network on the planet. The link is on the descriptor to this podcast. Use the coupon code, as Mr. Rayo will now tell you what it is. Mr. Rayo,
Summer,
reveal the coupon code.
summer 2024, and by the way, we're up to 91 likes. I wonder if we can get 9 more before we officially sign off.
Well, if you tell them what they get, if what they by using that coupon code, they might hit the like button just for that reason. What do
Well,
they get with the coupon code, Joe?
if they do hit the like button with the coupon code, you would get 10% off anything that Tempest sells. So that's a good bargain, wouldn't it be?
It would. All right. Oh, we're just at three likes short. We're at 97. Can somebody 99 and nobody be a Weisenheimer if it goes to 100 to unlike. But we're sitting at 99. 101. Okay, you can ring the bell, Joe.
Yay! We hit it.
But,
101.
and by the way, you can always catch if you missed the Joe and Joe Weather Show here live. You can of course always watch it on replay by going into my YouTube library and see the latest shows and all the other videos that I put up during the course of a day. And or you could go to you can go and listen to us on Spotify. We are on Spotify with other podcasts. I mean, I know we're not Joe, we're Joe and Joe, but we're not Joe Rogan. I get that. But we are there on Spot. We are there on Spotify, and also you can find us on Apple Podcasts and in a few other places that call podcasts home. So we're out there. You can't possibly avoid us. So we'll see everybody tomorrow.
We'll be here.
Night night.